Hey survivors and thrivers, it's Sophia Woodbury of thehappymedium.com. We continue our skills and techniques series with this week's video on how to stop complex PTSD triggers and start living a fulfilling life right now. So be sure to continue watching to get all of the details. For the best trauma recovery tips, tools, and strategies, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you'll never miss a video when I upload every week. Welcome back, everyone. If you're new here, I am a trauma survivor, a licensed professional counselor, a trauma recovery coach, and a certified clinical trauma specialist, helping people and organizations resolve the effects of trauma and build resilience. So with standard PTSD and complex PTSD, the triggers are often internal and external. So basically it just means that, externally, the things that we can see, taste, touch, smell, hear, and internally describes more of our internal experience, our thoughts, our emotions, sensations, and urges. So this can be anything from a look, the way that a person may give you a certain kind of look, or you may think that they're giving you a certain kind of look. It may be their demeanor, the tone of their voice, their style of communication. It can really be anything that sort of reminds you of a time when you were actually being abused or under threat. But with complex PTSD, the triggers often come from a much deeper well, meaning that there's something that really makes it much worse. And that is usually in the form of what we call an inner critical voice. Now, the inner critical voice, along with the other triggers that serve to remind us of our abusive past, it really is this nagging little voice that really tries to get you in this dance or this dialogue where you are actively ruminating or being consumed by feelings and thoughts by that trigger, and it makes you feel much worse. And so how do you pull yourself out of that? Before I tell you, I want to give you an example of how a situation that happened to me not too long ago that involved my inner critic. And I flashed back, I had an emotional flashback to a time where I was actually being abused. And so I want to tell you about this. And if you don't know what an emotional flashback is, I want you to watch the previous video. I'll put it here in the cards and you can actually get an idea of what I'm talking about. But there was a situation. I was in a group and our group leader was supposed to be somewhere else. And but she was there and she came into our meeting room. And just kind of, we were joking around right before we were getting started. Another lady was leading the group in her place. And so she came in the first time, nobody thought anything of it. And then she left because there was something she was getting ready to do. And then we got started, we were talking, and we started to get into the details of what we were talking about. And then she came back in. And everybody's like, what are you doing? And she was like, oh, I'm just checking some things out. You guys just go ahead and whatever. And all of a sudden, I felt myself. I got triggered. I got really angry. I felt judged. I didn't know until later, but I had emotionally flashed back to a time where my mother, I realized it was in connection with my mother. My mom was a person who was always, it seems like she was almost bent on catching me doing something wrong. It was the sneaky way that she did it. She was sneaking in and dropping by at unexpected times, trying to catch you doing. I was like, what are you trying to catch me doing? I never understood it, and she never really explained to me. But it was that sneakiness. It was the manner of her presence. This group leader, I'm going back to the group leader now, but that mirrored some of the experience that I had back in childhood with my mother. And so the inner critic came in and said, see, I told you there was something about her you couldn't trust. And I ruminated on that. It bothered me for days. How do you stop something like that? What do you do to first recognize that you're in an emotional flashback, and then what do you do to actually stop it in its tracks? Well, the first thing you need to do is recognize what triggers you. Like, I just gave you an example of what triggered me, but then I didn't know that that was an actual trigger until later. So becoming more aware of, if you engage with somebody, if you go to a certain event, or if you were having a conversation with somebody and maybe you start to not like the way they sound, or maybe their communication style, and so you just shut down or turned off or tuned out or got up and left or whatever. It's important to be able to start tracking that, because that behavior is trying to tell you something. You're being triggered. And it's possible that you're being, especially if you struggle with complex PTSD, that you are being emotionally flashed back to a time in your history where you were being abused, neglected, or threatened in some kind of way. So the next thing you need to do is to learn how to describe what you're feeling without judgment. So, it's one thing to know what triggers you, but just knowing what triggers you is not going to do any good if you don't know how to counter their effects. And so describing what you're feeling without judgment is one of the active ways that you can take to start doing that. So basically, you're just describing a feeling. Just describing a feeling, calling a feeling a feeling, calling a fact, calling an opinion, and a thought. So if you in fact have evidence that something is true, then you can describe that. You're not really putting a judgment on it because you have the facts to back it up. Now, if you are just having a thought or a feeling or opinion, you need to be able to call those things what they are so that you don't mistake them for being a fact. A lot of times when we feel a certain way, we just jump right to the emotion, how we feel about it, without giving any value to what they may be saying to us, actually the message that is actually given to us. And so we just go, oh, that person was rude to me, how stupid. Or I tried to make a point and this person just ignored me. I must not be any good. I must not be worthy. I must not be valuable. I must not be lovely. See how you start adding these judgments to things without any proof, without any evidence. And so if you feel some kind of way, just call that feeling a feeling. I feel angry. I feel frustrated. I feel disappointed. I feel depressed. Be able to do that and know that you are describing how you feel, but feelings are not facts. The only time something can be verified is if you have the evidence to back that up. Same thing with an opinion. It's my opinion that this is the best route to take, but I don't know. That might just be my thing. I can't say that that's going to work for someone else. So that typically is how you start to really take control of what you're feeling and stopping those triggers, because you're not putting any judgments on them, and that inner critic is not getting the opportunity to make things worse for you. And the last thing that you want to do is to develop and use your rescue skills. So what I mean by rescue skills is that, people are not always going to be available to come to your rescue, but there are ways that you can provide comfort and nurture and self-soothing for yourself if someone is not there. And one of the ways that you can do this is by developing things that you can do that appeal to your five senses. And so how we talked about earlier how triggers can be both external and internal. And so the external things, the things that we can taste, touch, see, smell, hear. We're going to develop counters to those triggers by coming up with things that can soothe us according to those five senses. So let's take sight for instance. 3 things that you can actually see that are calming, that are soothing, and that are nurturing for you, that can help you really snap out of that funk, or counter those triggers, the things that have come up for you that are making you feel bad. It could be pictures or images, the way that you do your hair or your makeup, the way that you do your nails, whatever it is that you can see and that is pleasurable for you, and it gets you into a feeling of, I feel okay, I can do this. And there you have it, your blueprint to stopping complex PTSD triggers in their tracks. And if you want to go deeper and learn how to build a recovery infrastructure, you definitely want to get your hands on my Complex PTSD Trauma Recovery Mini Course. It includes a 33-page workbook as well as 3 accompanying videos, all for free. You can click the link below in the resources to get that free mini course. If you're interested in joining an uplifting community where you can gain access to spiritual approaches to healing complex PTSD, be sure to join me on Instagram, where I share inspirational content that speaks to the spiritual aspects of healing. Okay, well, that will do it. Thank you guys for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. And if you like this video, be sure to show some love by hitting the like button, share with your friends, and drop a comment below to let me know if you struggle with managing complex PTSD triggers, or if you've got it all under control. Last but not least, don't forget to subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, click that notification bell so that you will always be in the know when I drop new videos every single Wednesday. I'll see you guys next time. Have a great day. Bye-bye.